Hey everybody, my name is Mark Thwaites. I'm a solution engineer at Keyfactor, and I have the great opportunity to provide a demonstration of our Keyfactor Command certificate management application, which can be deployed directly from the ServiceNow Store. As a quick overview, the application enables your ServiceNow users to be able to request, renew, download, and revoke certificates directly within ServiceNow, eliminating the requirement for users to log directly into the Keyfactor Command portal, which is going to simplify user administration. All certificates are tied to specific applications, and only designated application owners are able to manage their certificate inventory associated with their applications. In addition, all certificate requests are tied into ServiceNow's ticketing system, allowing for approval or rejection flows to be executed before any certificate actions are executed in the Keyfactor Command platform. And lastly, ServiceNow incidents can be created based off expiration alerting within Keyfactor Command, where a workflow will go ahead and create those incidents and also notify those application owners when their certificates are coming up for expiration to ensure that you have no type of outage. To start our demonstration, I'm logged in as Tina, who's our application admin. And what she's going to do is she's going to go into the catalog and she's going to go ahead and create a couple applications for a new person who just joined the organization, who's going to need to be able to do some certificate requests for applications that'll be tied to his responsibility. So he's going to be tied to an e-commerce website. So the application owner will be Tim. And the approval group, who's going to be doing any approvals of these flows, will be the IT security team, and these will be the FQDNs he can go ahead and request for that application. So we'll go ahead and submit that. That'll get added to the applications table. And what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and click back, and we'll go ahead and add another one here for Tim as well. So this will be an internal portal. And this will be tied to Tim again. We'll use the same IT security team for approval, and this will be for internal portal.local. All right, we'll go ahead and submit that. So now Tim is enabled where when he logs directly into the ServiceNow portal, he's going to be able to request certificates for either application. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So I'm logged in as Tim, who's my application owner, and he's going to go to the catalog and go ahead and make a request for certificate directly within ServiceNow. He can either request one with a private key that'll get generated by Keyfactor Command, or he can submit a CSR. So let's go ahead and select that first option. What we're going to see is that he can either create a new enrollment or renew an existing certificate in his inventory. He's the application owner. These are the applications that Tina made available to him just a minute ago. So we'll do one for the e-commerce website. He'll be able to specify which certificate template and the corresponding CA that will go ahead and do that enrollment. So we'll go ahead and just do the 1 year. And then he'll define the key algorithm and the key size. And then what he can do is he can go ahead and determine the details for the DN. So what's important here is that the common name and the DNS values, those are going to be validated to ensure that they're matching the FQDN or FQDNs defined within the application that he's doing the request for. So for example, if the common name or the DNS values did not match or were not allowed, then you'd have to adjust that request. You also can go ahead and determine the criticality for the request. So I can say this has a high level of getting the certificate turned around very quickly. And then this is metadata that will get created directly for that certificate record in Command once the certificate has completed enrollment. So I'll go ahead and click on Request. And this will go from an initiating stage to an approval stage. So we can actually see more details about that request by drilling down to the request. And he can actually put in details here saying what the request is for. So this is something that the approver can review. So in this case here, it's for a new e-commerce website that's being deployed in the East data center. So we'll go ahead and post that in the activity stream. Now what we can do is we can go directly into Team's email to be able to see that digital trail for that request, but that is also going to be reflected in the approver's emails where I have two tied to that IT security group where they can go ahead and approve or deny the request directly from email or directly within ServiceNow. I'm logged into Tim's email account where we see that digital trail where that certificate request was processed directly from ServiceNow. Now he can actually go directly into that request directly from his email account and get into the item record to be able to update the activity stream if he needs to put some more details around the certificate request if required. But he'll also be able to see the status of the request directly within ServiceNow and via his email, regardless if it's approved or denied. So let's go ahead and take a look at the approval side next for one of our approvers via their email. So I'm now logged in as Sally where she received the request. She can go ahead and review that directly from her email account. We can see it's for a PFX certificate enrollment. It has a high priority. She can actually approve or reject it directly from email. She can see that her colleague is also tied to the request where he could go ahead and do the approval. Just has to be one of those people within that group that's tied to the application. And then she can also look at the request and actually process it directly within ServiceNow. So that's what we're going to do next here. We're going to do that within the ServiceNow instance. So we can see here I'm logged in as Sally, who's my approver. She received this approval that she's going to go ahead and review. She can look at all approvals or just the one that just came in today from Tim. She can go ahead and take a look at the actual request that's going to be sent directly to Keyfactor Command if approved. And then we also see details in that activity stream that gives us details about the request itself. And if she wants to go ahead and put details in here as well, she can definitely do so. So I'm going to just scroll to the top here. We'll go ahead and approve this. And that's going to go ahead and trigger the API call within Keyfactor Command to process that enrollment against that certificate template tied to that CA. But we're also going to see that rich metadata being associated with that certificate record. Once that's completed, the status for that certificate will get updated directly within ServiceNow, where that certificate record will be reflected so that Tim will be able to download that certificate directly from the ServiceNow instance. But there's also going to be a notification that's going to be sent to Tim's email to let him know that the request was completed, where the certificate was enrolled successfully, so he can go ahead and process that download directly from the ServiceNow portal. So let's go ahead and take a look at that next. So I'm logged back into Tim's email account where we can see that request is approved and we have a successful certificate enrollment. From this email, Tim can click on a link to take him directly into his certificate inventory within ServiceNow to be able to download that certificate in an on-demand capacity. So he'll go ahead and click on that record, and then he'll go down to the option where he wants to download the certificate with a private key. And then from here, he'll have an option to download the actual certificate itself. So we can see that that is started. And then he can go and deploy this certificate with that password for that private key material. What we're going to do is we're going to jump into Keyfactor Command and show the same certificate, which is going to have a certificate identifier of 1620. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're in Keyfactor Command. We're going to go to Certificates and Certificate Search. And the top record is going to be the certificate that was requested and approved. And we can go ahead and open up that record, and this will have the details tied to the actual request that was processed by the API. This will also include all that rich metadata that was populated by Tim. And then under status, we can see that specific certificate record. So what's important here is that the certificate is requested in an on-demand capacity directly from ServiceNow, where we're not storing that private key material in ServiceNow. It's stored securely within Keyfactor Command. All right, so let's go back into ServiceNow and take a look at some of the other flows which are available to Tim and other application owners within ServiceNow. All right, I'm logged back in as Tim is my application owner. We can go back to the catalog here. And you can see we have options to do a CSR-based enrollment or a revocation request. So let's go ahead and do a quick CSR-based enrollment. I'll just go ahead and select the other application that was tied to me. We can edit the template and certificate authority like we saw earlier with the PFX enrollment. I'll paste in my prepared CSR value. We can determine that criticality for how quickly I need that certificate. Then I can populate that rich metadata so that I can go ahead and submit that request directly for approval. So we'll go ahead and click on request, and it's going to go through the exact same process that we saw earlier, where it's going to go ahead and send receipt directly to my application owner to let them know that this request is in process. And then my approvers are going to also be notified where they're going to go ahead and process that request, whether it is an approval or a denial. So in this case here, I'm going to log in with my other approver, and this time I'm going to deny the request. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So I'm now logged into Tom's email account, who's the other approver in that IT security group, where we can see the original request was the one that Sally approved, but this is the one that just came in that is for the CSR-based enrollment, right? And this one has that moderate priority state. So in this scenario here, I'm going to go ahead and reject it. And I could put some verbiage in here about why this is being rejected. And I could also put that directly into, let's say, the activity stream. So it could be visible directly within ServiceNow. But let's go ahead and send this off. And then we'll see that Tim will receive a notification saying that his request for that certificate has been denied. So we're logged back into Tim's email account, and we can see that there's a rejection email saying that that certificate request got denied. And if he wants to see more details, he could directly go into ServiceNow and see that specific request being canceled. But more importantly, if the approver put activity stream information in here on why it was not allowed, then that would be visible too, so that Tim can make an informed decision on how he can re-request that certificate for the project he's working on. So the power here is that your approvers not only are able to do the approval or denial directly within their email account, they can also do it directly within ServiceNow. And then lastly, from the catalog, we can also do a revocation if we know there needs to be a certificate needs to be revoked within the organization that are tied specifically to Tim's certificate inventory. Here he can select the specific application where he wants to do that revocation. So let's say it will be for that certificate that was enrolled earlier, and then he would see that certificate that he can go ahead and perform the revocation against. He can define the specific reason, put in the comments, define the criticality, and then make that request. And then it would go through the exact same process of an approval or denial based off that application group that is tied to this application. All right, and the last thing I want to go ahead and highlight is how we can create an incident directly within ServiceNow from Keyfactor Command based off an expiration alert to notify your application owners when certificates are coming up for expiration so they can perform that renewal directly within the ServiceNow application. So this functionality is defined directly within Keyfactor Command under alerts and expiration. So here, every day at 5 a.m., which is configurable, these alerts will kick off. So in this scenario here, every single certificate that's in this collection of e-commerce certs will be validated to see if any of them are going to expire within 10 days. If so, it's going to go ahead and run a workflow. And this workflow is specifically going to go ahead and leverage a ServiceNow API to go ahead and create the incident, but also pull back the application owner's email address so that we can notify that recipient that their certificate is coming up for expiration. So we can go ahead and test this out. So I'm going to click on test. We'll go ahead and define a future expiration, which is going to be 10 days out before the certificate expires. And then we'll go ahead and generate that. And that'll be against that certificate that we enrolled against earlier. And we'll go ahead and start that test. And it's going to go ahead and perform that workflow to do these operations. So this has been successful. Let's go ahead and take a look at the email in Tim's account, and then we'll take a look at the incident directly within ServiceNow. So we're logged into Tim's email account, and we can see that we received an email from Keyfactor Command saying that there's a certificate coming up for expiration, which requires renewal in ServiceNow. We have the expiration date and certificate details, such as the identifier, the application owner, the DN, the thumbprint, the serial number. And you also have directions here on how to actually renew the certificate directly within the ServiceNow portal. This entire email is customizable within Keyfactor Command within that workflow, so you can customize it to how you want this message to be received by your application owners. So let's go ahead and take a look at the corresponding incident in ServiceNow. So to view the corresponding incident directly within ServiceNow, you can go to Keyfactor Command, click on expiring certificates. This will bring up all the incidents that are expiring for the organization. And then you can click on that incident and you'll see that specific detail for the certificate in question. So in this case here, it was certificate 1620. Now to go ahead and renew it directly from ServiceNow, that goes back into the catalog. So from Tim's catalog, he's going to be able to select that PFX request, but instead of doing a new certificate enrollment, he's going to go ahead and process a renewal. And he'll select that specific application. So we know it's that e-commerce website, which that certificate's tied to. And we can go ahead and select that certificate based off that identifier. We're also going to see that the template and the CA and the thumbprint will be populated, and he can define that criticality. Once ready, he can go ahead and click on request, and it's going to go through the same process as we've seen before, where those approvers will be notified, where they can approve or deny the request. But ultimately, Tim will be notified that he's going to be able to download that enrolled certificate that's been renewed directly within Keyfactor Command. And keep in mind, he can also check on the request directly within ServiceNow, and he's going to be able to get to that certificate to download directly from My Certificates. So he has the ability to have notifications being sent to his email, but also tracking the status of all his certificate requests and operations directly within ServiceNow. So that's going to wrap up our demonstration of the Keyfactor Command certificate management application that can be deployed from the ServiceNow Store, which is going to enable your application owners to easily request new certificates, renew existing ones, or revoke certificates directly within ServiceNow. All automated backend operations will happen seamlessly within Keyfactor Command. Plus, we're also preventing outages with automated expiration alerts that are going to notify your application owners when certificates are coming up for expiration so they can take that action appropriately.